Who was bending?
Jay convinced me to do.
All right, good. Well, by any means necessary. And
so no trick questions.
No, all right. It is a trick question though, because let's see if you get the right answer. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I think it was really wise of you to plan this during the Milken event. I thought that was very. Was that convenient or was it strategic?
Strategic by design.
Nice.
Third day. Yes. We knew people would be in town and join us here. But I ask you because, and thank you for that answer, because when I ask sports team owners, how you doing? I would say 95% of the time, the response is, oh, tough game last night. Or, oh, we won 10 in a row. They don't separate. I say, no, how are you doing? I know how the team is doing. I can watch that at night. How you seem to be able to separate? How is that difficult? How have we been able to do that?
You know, when I first started with the Dodgers, I lived and died spring training games, and you quickly realize that that's not going to go. Well, it's not going to work. You know, especially spring training games. I mean, why would you care? So by just getting to the point where you can compartmentalize, kind of what's going on and off the pitch or on the field or on the court, you can be in a position to recognize that. And by the way, you can't fix anything quickly, right? So everything takes time. So if you're trying to figure out how do I just go out and make a quick change or how do I influence a quick change, it's unlikely to work.
You had to learn that along the way, because I'm guessing a lot of owners, and you were probably not the most patient person in core business. If there's something wrong, you want to fix it quickly.
Well, I think, if you want to get out of a burning building, you could jump out the window, but it's going to hurt, and you're going to have to go back and address the fact that your building's burning down. I think it's much smarter to just take the stairs, and kind of get out in an elegant way. And learning that, took a little bit of time.
You're an LP in the Lakers. You've got the Dodgers, investor in the Dodgers. You've got Chelsea. Please don't give me they're like my children. Do you have a favorite, one you enjoy the most?
They're all so different, right? When you look at the margins of error in football are so tight that, you really just are 90 minutes locked in. Baseball is, you can really visit with someone while you're enjoying a game, and, you now have to turn and watch a pitch. So basically, there's no better sport for just visiting and hanging out with your kids or friends or business partners than baseball. And basketball is just kind of intense up and down. So you're literally just kind of back and forth, right? So they're also different experiences that it's really hard to sit and say. Obviously when the teams are playing well, you're excited about all of them. So, it's really about how are they doing, how are they progressing, how are they gelling, and that to me is the thing that really matters.
You said it's different experience, and experiential we're hearing a lot about in sports these days. Are you focused on sort of game day experiences, that battle between at home versus game? I'm different than my son. He wants to be at home. I like to go to the game. What are you focused on with the teams? How are you presenting the games?
Well, I think look at the Dodgers, for example, right? We've done a couple $100 million of investment into the stadium. The whole outfield now is, the blue heaven, Tommy Lasorda's homage. We've got a lot of games for kids out there. It used to be before the pitch clock, you would end up having 3.5, 4-hour games. And last night's game, I think, took 2.5 hours. But we're still giving people lots of different things to experience. The stadium was originally built, so it was very difficult to move from top tier to down to the bottom. And now we've got elevators out back, we've got connected facilities. So, I think the thought is obviously how do you cater to, as many people as possible. And, the best thing is if you get a fan at 6 or 7 years old, you're going to have a fan forever. And so one of my favorite things at the games is to give kids balls, because that once they get a little baseball, think about what the lifetime value of that couple dollar ball is, because now they're hooked.
When you bought the team, and I heard this with Ballmer, I've heard this with the guys when they bought the Milwaukee Bucks, and Mark's here. They're nuts. Those valuations don't make any sense. How did you approach sort of back of napkin mathematics when you decided what the team was worth and what it would be worth down the line?
The good news is the revenues are keeping growing. So I think as long as the revenues keep growing, and you think about the size of an audience that you have and the size of your fan base, and I think lots of experiences that you can offer, we're just starting to scratch the surface. I mean, I think we're now working on something for the Dodgers where it's a complete immersive experience, where you go in and you can be on the field when Kirk Gibson hit the home run. You can see what it feels like to face Ohtani when he's pitching. You can take the big curveball that Kershaw throws and feel it, see it. So we think that if we build a couple of these around the world, that would probably be a couple million people that would visit, and they're probably going to invest $50 to $60 for the experience. So just say we have a couple of those around the world, that's a couple $100 million of revenue.
You seem very confident, like, the media or the money's there, the revenue will be there. Does anything keep you up at night? Is it recession-proof? Is sports everything proof? Or, like we say, the NBA is obviously working on a very good deal right now. There are some signs of cracking, of course, in the RSNs. What keeps you up at night? What are the speed bumps ahead?
I think continuing to engage with younger generations is the key to me. And by the way, now these are all becoming global brands, right? So as the world becomes more and more connected, you're getting kind of more and more fans all around the world. So and I mean, what else is there in today's world other than sports that serves as such a unifying, forcing kind of function, where people are so connected that they're almost completely forgetting what's going on around the world while they're enjoying the event.
That's good and bad, I think, in your case. I mean, geopolitical strife, to me, would be one of those risk factors. It's one of the reasons why you were able to buy Chelsea, that Roman Abramovich had to sell the team because of geopolitical strife. Do you see that as more barrier or more opportunity?
I don't think it's going to change how people embrace, the sport. I think that it's scary, right? I don't think in America people appreciate kind of how scary things are out there, between Iran and China and Russia, and I think that's all reason to be nervous. But I don't think it's reason to be nervous about the passion that people have about their sports teams.
We have a whole bunch of tentpoles: media, real estate, finance. Give me your picture. Let's start with the Dodgers because we're here in LA. You're sitting on real estate, undeveloped real estate. Steve Cohen is looking to do his mixed-use development. We're seeing that all over the place. What are we going to see? What's going to be the end game around Dodger Stadium?
I'm not going to talk about that.
I've heard gondolas are coming, and from New York, we don't see. But how do you see the different tentpoles? Just how do they work together? How do you approach what you're trying to build?
Well, again, I guess it all comes back down to, when we thought about the Dodgers, right? You have the experience around the stadium. You have the experience in the stadium, and those are your kind of, let's call it the base revenues, right? What's going on in merch and tickets and hospitality and sales of food and beverage and so forth, and then you have the glow that comes out of the stadium, right? And how do you get that glow through media rights into as many people's hands as possible? I think the World Series had something like let me think, 45 million people watched the World Series with the Rangers versus the Diamondbacks last year. We had 70 million people watch the Ohtani press conference.
You brought up his name. I heard one of your co-owners said he was blown away by sort of the sponsor reaction to Shohei Ohtani. you certainly must have had an expectation. What was the expectation and what's the reality?
I mean, he is. I think the first 725 games that he played, and the first 725 or maybe 425 games. Anyway, when you comp him and Babe Ruth, they're literally on top of each other through the first period of time, however long they've been in the league. You know, and the only difference is that Ohtani has one more pitching win than Babe does at this point in time. So we're talking about, you know, a phenomenon that, you know, is, forget generational. You know, this is, you know, every 100 years.
And nobody watched Babe Ruth on TikTok. That's
No.
another big difference. But tell me, how do you monetize it? I'm serious. I mean, this is a global icon that extends your brand. By the way, according to Sportico's latest valuations, $6.3 billion on the Dodgers. You're extending your brand outside the U.S. He's a global star. How do you monetize? What's the plan?
Well, I think if you look inside Dodger Stadium, you'll see what's going on. You'll see the branding that's coming from, you know, all around the sponsors, and a lot of them are Japanese. You know, you see that, you know, when you go to the games now, you know, there are a strong fan base that's there supporting him directly, and there's, you know, there's no doubt why those people are there, right? They're holding signs up, they're wearing jerseys, they're just super fans. And you go to Tokyo, and all you can see is you know, pictures of Ohtani. When we opened up in Seoul in South Korea, you know, you couldn't get tickets. The stadium was only 18,000 people, but you know, finding tickets, you know, was a nightmare in a market where it's hard to get secondary tickets. So, you know, I think just the overall power of, you know, what he represents around the world, you know, I think it's great for baseball. You know, and you know, we're hopeful that, you know, some of the old school kind of rules that, you know, keep teams from really wanting to develop international fan base, because of course, you know, when we're doing something internationally, you know, that's a league asset, not a team asset. So it's really hard to want to build things and grow things and do things if you're only getting 1/30 of the revenue. But that was all rules that were put in place, you know, before anyone really thought about this as a super connected world.
So do you view it as because of these rules, you're disincentivized to go out and seek opportunity elsewhere because you're really not going to make more than, say, the Houston Astros?
I mean, it's just really a prioritization, right? Where does it sit on the priority list?
How can monetizing international Shohei Ohtani at this time not be priority 1 or 1-2 at Major League Baseball? Help me understand that.
We have a little thing called the RSNs that we got to work through. So I think that's a big priority. You know, we have to figure out, you know, how to transition, you know, to a new media world. You know, and so I think that's a pretty big priority. You know, I think you know, growing the sport should be a very high priority, and you know, there's no better player to grow the sport internationally with than Shohei.
Everybody at the high end, you, Yankees, Mets, Cubs, you guys are fine with your RSNs. The Red Sox, those are you're fine. Do you have disparate interests from the clubs that are seeing this revenue disappearing? They're saying we need more help. I had a sports business executive describe to me years ago RSNs as melting glaciers. Like, this should not have taken people by surprise. How much are you expected to help the others?
I think that there's a plan that's being worked on right now, you know, that is in the best interest of, you know, the league. So there's going to have to be some coming together around what's the best thing for the league. So, you know, I think that we're all interested in supporting the game and growing the game and building the game. But obviously, the way the sport was set up, you know, when we paid $2.15 billion for the Dodgers, part of what we bargained for is the 5 million homes in Los Angeles. So, you know, that has to be sorted out ultimately.
As part of that deal, though, you guys gave up, you knew you were going to give up some distribution, by the way, for the guarantee payment. Has it hurt the Dodger brand? That was the big criticism. That'll hurt the Dodger brand. It doesn't seem as if it has. That distribution at the time wasn't really a big problem.
I mean, it was very frustrating for a period of time when DirecTV wouldn't broadcast the games. That got resolved. And, you know, I think if you come back to what do people really care about, right? They care about winning. So, you know, as long as we're still winning and in the hunt every year, you know, and putting a really good product out there that people get excited about, then I think that's what matters most to the Dodger brand. You know, and obviously all the great stuff that the team has done over the years, right? Through Jackie Robinson and, you know, obviously the long list of tremendous players that are all superstars. And, you know, now we've got, you know, a great squad that, you know, represents well.
We talk about sports platform companies now, and Fenway is one of them, Harris Blitzer another. What made you say, well, I don't have enough yet. I've got to go look across the pond. I should buy an EPL team. I should buy another global brand. I should be involved there and further divide attention. Everything takes time. What was the premise on let me go get Chelsea?
There's no bigger sport in the world. So, you know, I think when you think about, you know, just the size and scale of football, you know, the European football, you know, it's just mind-numbing. And there's no better league in the world than the Premier League. I mean, you look at, you know, how these guys play, the speed with which they play the game. You know, one of my good players from, you know, who I, you know, had a great relationship and still do is Koulibaly. And Koulibaly came over from Serie A, and he told me one time, he said, in Serie A, I get to think and then run. In Premier League, I have to run while I think, and I'm still adjusting to that.
I wonder, what do you think he'd say about MLS? How do you make Koulibaly, Raheem Sterling, are they brands here yet? How do you make my son, if he's not a diehard soccer fan, if he's not waking up Saturday morning to watch, if he doesn't know Luton Town, how do you get those kids into soccer and becoming Chelsea fans in particular?
Obviously, you have to make it relevant to them. And I think that the sport's becoming more and more relevant. I think the window that they have, you know, for, you know, in the East Coast in particular, Saturday morning and Sunday morning, where there's nothing really that competes with it, you know, in the form of sports, really gives it a great opportunity to reach in. I think the fan fests that they do from city to city to city to city, you see them going with momentum. You know, I think hopefully, you know, Cole Palmer will become a household name soon, you know, because of course, you know, he's been a phenomenon for us. And so we're thinking hard about, you know, how do we continue to expand our brand in the United States. So, and that's ultimately you know, a priority as well.
One of your partners on the deal, clearly capital. We're hearing a lot about institutional capital in U.S. sport, NFL. Just your thoughts on the impact, the need for capital in U.S. sports.
I think it will continue to develop as these platforms continue to professionalize. You know, for a very long time, you know, they were kind of hobbies almost, right? And now they're becoming very professional. They're thinking a lot about, you know, how do you build the brands? How do you expand the brands? You know, the management teams are continuing to come from different fields. So grow the management team. I think the NFL is way out ahead on everyone. You know, and they've done the best job. You know, and one of the things that they have that is very fortunate is they negotiate all their media centrally. And I think that was also really a lot about timing. Like when they started to become really successful, like baseball's rules were written, you know, when radios were the way games were distributed. And the NFL came to play, you know, and really became super popular as the TV became popular. So their timing was such that, they realized, I think, that, negotiating all this centrally, gives them, a lot of clout, right? And look at what they've done, right? They have ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, Amazon, and Google, all pulling for them, every day. And when you think about the reach that those platforms have, and all they're doing is thinking about how do I make the NFL more successful every day, and they all have a shared interest in it, right? So, and then you look at, on the other end of the spectrum, baseball, where Milwaukee has to go out and deal with their own distribution, and a city of a couple 100,000 homes has the ability to have a different conversation, or the inability to have the same conversation as a market like New York, where there's millions of homes. So, I think that the fact as how they kind of evolved, over time, is really relevant to how we got to where we are. And, change is always difficult. But, I think that, there's now forcing functions, and, we're going to have to see those changes as they evolve.
Speaking of forcing functions, we've heard about a salary cap in the EPL. I mean, you're competing with petrostates. You're competing with sovereign wealth funds. I would think that's not a comfortable place for you to be. NFL, on the opposite end, has a strict, hard cap. One of the reasons why those franchises are worth so much. There's no relegation. Why is EPL more attractive or as attractive compared to the NFL? Why didn't you buy an NFL team where you're spitting out $150 million in profit even before you sell a ticket, jersey, hot dog?
Well, I think one of the things that the Premier League clubs have, right, is they've got, the worldwide marks that they can use. So, basically, you can build the Chelsea brand around the world, and obviously we've got, a global group of players, and, from, Argentina to Brazil. And so part of, the long-range plan will be really to extend the brand as much as possible to build the fan base. Because ultimately, the larger our fan base grows, the more competitive we'll be able to be, because these salary caps are based on revenue. So in order to compete, you have to have a growing revenue, and I think a brand like Chelsea, really allows for that.
How much of growing that brand, especially globally, is predicated on winning?
I think that winning is at the top of the things that's most important. So I would say it's, obviously, when you're attracting a new fan, the key is to have something that's really aspirational. And obviously, I think we've seen, the last 2.5 games at least, the second half of Aston Villa and Tottenham and West Ham, where we played just beautiful football. It was so fluid. It was exactly the way we drew it up, where we come out of the back, build up, and then move up the pitch, very organized. And, the number of shots we had on goal over those 2.5 games, you could really start to see what we were working on coming together. And so our goal is obviously to win. And, I think just that the commentary has changed, over the last 2.5 games. I've never seen anything change so quickly, than kind of perspectives on how a team does, or how a team is doing.
So you've got Arsenal and Man City up top. That's Stan Kroenke. You've got Abu Dhabi. Then are you in favor of a cap where it would certainly control spending and perhaps drive profitability, although it might even the playing field, because there's historically been that top 6 or 7 in the EPL, make it harder to win?
I think we're supportive of anything that adds to the competitive nature of the sport. And because I think obviously, the reason, the Premier League is doing so well, right, is because it is so competitive and everyone wants to watch it. And no one knows how, kind of games are going to end. And, of course, if you look around like what's going on right now in different European leagues, some of them are having a hard time getting their media deals done. So, I think the competitiveness, that you're going to continue to see and evolve as the sport evolves is just going to be good for the Premier League.
We've already heard about the meteoric rise of women's sports. You took a run at the Washington Spirit. That didn't work out. What about moving forward, looking at anything in the women's sports?
We have the Chelsea women team.
How does that do compared to the men? How does it perform on the field and on the ledger?
It's super competitive. We've won. Emma Hayes has been an amazing coach for us, and we've been top of the table, a lot. We've gotten to the semifinals of Champions League, and it's been a great team, top team around the world. And then the Sparks, we were early investors in the Sparks, and obviously watching the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. You had more people watch the women's Final Four than you had watched the men's Final Four.
Does it change how you move forward with the Sparks in the next season?
I think we continue to be excited about growing all of women's sports. I mean, it's fantastic to see how engaged the U.S. was, and I expect it to continue to develop. Obviously, the soccer league here is doing great, and you're going to see more and more expansion. My partner Stan Kasten is building the hockey league, and so I think we're really excited about the opportunity in women's sports, and think it's only going to grow.
Last question. Is there any deal you regret not doing?
There's a lot.
Want to give me one in sports?
We've looked at lots of things over the years, and the reality is they all would have been good, right? Because the valuations are continuing to grow. On the men's side, right, they're clearly not making more, right? And the women's side is just growing into a demand curve. And I think one of the things that was so great, in our most recent game at Chelsea against Barcelona, we had almost 40,000 people, watching that women's match. And we had record gate, we had record merch, we had record food and beverage, and I just think we're just in the really early days of what that's all going to be able to become. And now we're having more and more conversations with sponsors who are waking up to the fact that these are really good things to brand.
We do not get injury time up here. We just get yanked right off. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.